The most painful betrayal comes from family. I never thought there would come a day when my own parents would look me in the eye and tell me that my children were not welcome in their home. But that's exactly what happened. That day, I was in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner, when my phone buzzed. Seeing my mom's name on the screen, I smiled. Despite the tensions between us in the past, I always held on to hope for warm family moments. "Honey, we need to talk about Thanksgiving this year." Her voice was softer than usual. I pictured the holiday dinner, the aroma of roasted turkey filling the house, cinnamon and nutmeg blending in the air. My kids, Emma and Lucas, would be running around the table, giggling with their grandparents like they always did. "Sure, Mom. What's the plan this year?" I asked, my voice full of anticipation. She hesitated, and in that brief second, I knew something was off. "This year, dinner will be a little smaller, just for adults," I frowned. "So, no kids?" Another pause. Then she spoke again a little more hesitantly. "Not exactly." A cold chill ran down my spine. "Mom, what do you mean?" She sighed, as if I was the one making things difficult. "Ally, you know your dad and I love Emma and Lucas, but they're a little too energetic. We just want a peaceful dinner this year." I gripped my phone tighter. "Are you saying my kids aren't invited? What about Daniel's kids?" "Daniel, my brother. The golden child. The one who never had to try to be loved." Mom went silent for a long moment before finally speaking in a tone I recognized immediately. This wasn't up for discussion. This was a decision already made. Daniel and Sophie will be coming with their kids, but you know, their children are quieter, more well-behaved, they fit in better at dinner. It felt like a slap to the face. I had always known my parents favored Daniel, but I told myself they still loved me. I was wrong. They didn't just treat me differently, they looked down on my children. Anger, hurt, and betrayal surged through me. "They're just kids, Mom. Emma is 7, Lucas is 4. Of course they have energy, but they are sweet and they love you more than anyone." Her voice dropped, but there was no sign of backing down. "Ally, we just want a quiet dinner. Don't make this a big deal, it's nothing personal." Nothing personal? They had just told me to my face that my kids weren't good enough to sit at the same table, yet Daniel's kids were, and I was supposed to just let that go? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. If my children aren't welcome, then neither am I. Another long silence. Then Mom sighed again, this time with irritation rather than patience. "That's up to you." Click. She hung up. I stood there, still holding the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. In the living room, Emma and Lucas were still playing happily, completely unaware that the people they adored most had just pushed them aside. I took a shaky breath. My whole life, I had tried to please my parents, tried to prove I mattered as much as Daniel. But now, I finally saw the truth. I would never be enough for them. And if I kept tolerating this, if I still showed up at that dinner without my kids by my side, I would be teaching them one thing. That they weren't worthy of love. No. I would never let them feel that way. They made their choice. Now, I'm making mine, and they will regret pushing me and my children out of their lives. This translation keeps the tone raw and emotional while making it natural for an American audience. Let me know if you want any refinements. Here is your translation into American English. The harsh truth and the unforgivable anger. The call ended, but the pain in my chest remained. I stared at my phone, my fingers gripping it so tightly that my knuckles turned white. What had my mother just said? That Emma and Lucas weren't good enough to sit at the family table? But Daniel's kids were welcome? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but the rage inside me rose like a tidal wave. For years I had grown accustomed to being second place in this family. Daniel was always the golden child, while I, no matter what I did, was never enough. But now, they weren't just pushing me aside, they were doing it to my children. Did they think I would stay silent and accept this? No. Not this time. I stepped into the living room, where Emma and Lucas played in the corner, their laughter ringing like the sweetest melody. These two little souls were my entire world. And yet, their own grandparents saw them as a burden? What was I supposed to do? I could ignore this, pretend it never happened, and go to Thanksgiving dinner without my kids. But if I did that, I would be teaching my children that love was conditional, that they had to change who they were to be accepted. Or, I could stand up for them. Protect the family I had built. Show my parents that I was no longer their easily manipulated little girl. Does this story sound familiar? How many times have you been put in the same position, treated as a second choice, just because you didn't fit the narrative someone else created? How many times have you tried to please others, only to be met with rejection? Think about this. If I gave in, if I went to that dinner without my kids, I would be betraying my own family. And one day when Emma and Lucas grew up, they would realize the truth. Their mother didn't fight for them. No, I wouldn't let that happen. I grabbed my phone, opened my messages, and quickly typed out a reply to Daniel. Enjoy your perfect dinner. My kids and I will create our own Thanksgiving. Send. In that moment I felt lighter than I ever had before. I no longer needed their approval. I didn't have to prove anything to my parents or to Daniel. The awakening. When I stopped playing by their rules. The next morning, a text from Daniel appeared on my phone. Mom says you're overreacting about this. Why do you always have to make everything dramatic? It's just one dinner. I smirked. Just one dinner? No, this wasn't just one dinner. This was a message from my parents, to me and my children. You don't matter. Your kids don't matter. And Daniel? He didn't see the problem because he had always been the favored one. I held my phone, my hands trembling with anger. I could easily fire back with a sharp, bitter response. But then, I stopped. Why should I even explain myself? Me. Hope you and Mom have a nice Thanksgiving. But don't expect me to be there. Send. No explanations. No arguments. No need. If you've ever been in my shoes, treated as an afterthought, expected to push down your feelings to keep the peace, remember this. You don't owe them your silence. I no longer cared about proving my worth to my parents. If they didn't value me and my children, then I didn't need them either. And trust me, they would soon realize what they had lost. The boiling point. When I refused to submit, Daniel's message may have ended the conversation, but my parents' silence was just the beginning of a new game. For a whole week, I heard nothing from them. No calls, no messages, no apologies. I could imagine exactly what they were thinking. She'll cool down. She always does. But this time, they were wrong. Then on Sunday morning my phone rang. It was Mom. I hesitated but picked up. Ally, you need to stop this childish behavior, she said sharply. Childish? I scoffed, bitterness dripping from my voice. Since when is protecting my children from favoritism considered childish, Mom? We just wanted a quiet dinner. That doesn't mean we don't love the kids. She sighed, sounding exasperated, as if I was the problem. No. What you wanted was a perfect Thanksgiving by your standards, a standard my kids and I will never meet. I heard my dad's voice in the background cutting in. Ally, we raised you. We deserve your respect. I closed my eyes, my chest tightening with resentment. They would never change. To them, love had always come with conditions. So respect means accepting being treated like an outsider? I asked, my voice cold. For once, my mother fell silent. Maybe she finally realized that I wasn't playing by their rules anymore. You're right, I continued. I've spent my whole life trying. Thanksgiving marked a turning point in my life. No more chasing my parents' back approval. No more feeling like I was less than. I had chosen my family, Emma, Lucas, and Liam, and I had never felt more right. But I had no idea the real storm was still ahead. A few days later, on a freezing morning, I received a notification from my bank. I opened the app, my eyes scanning the words, "Transaction declined." My heart stopped. I didn't remember making any unusual purchases. I quickly checked my account details and nearly dropped my phone. Over $3,000 had been withdrawn in the past month. What? I frantically checked the transaction history. Grocery stores, gas stations, utility bills, clothing stores, all places I hadn't been to. For a moment, I thought my account had been hacked. But then, I saw the name of a familiar grocery store, the one in my parents' neighborhood. A chill ran down my spine. I immediately called the bank. A polite voice came through the line. Ma'am, these transactions were made by an authorized user on your account. An authorized user? I froze. And suddenly, everything came rushing back like an electric shock. This translation keeps the raw emotions intact, while making it natural for an American audience. Let me know if you need any adjustments. Years ago, I tried to help. Now my own parents stole from me. Years ago, when my dad fell ill and struggled financially, I added him as an authorized user on my credit card. to help them cover temporary expenses. I had forgotten about it, but apparently my parents hadn't, and not only did they forget to tell me when their financial situation improved, they kept using the card as if it were their own money. I had been stolen from by my own parents. My hands trembled as I dialed my mom's number. When she answered, her voice was calm, as if nothing had happened. "Allie, I was just about to call you. I wanted to ask if you could help us cover the electricity bill this month. It's gone up so much, it's ridiculous." "Mom." I cut her off, my voice sharp. "Do you have something you want to tell me?" Silence. "I don't know what you're talking about." I let out a dry, bitter laugh, one that even I barely recognized coming from myself. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out? How long have you and Dad been using my card?" Another pause. Then she sighed, shifting into the guilt-tripping tone I had heard my entire life. "Ally, you're making this a much bigger deal than it is. We're family. When you were little, we raised you, paid for your school, bought you clothes. Now that you're successful, can't you help us out a little?" I felt my blood boil. "Help out a little?" I nearly shouted. "You've taken thousands of dollars from me without saying a word. You didn't ask, you didn't tell me, you just took. If that's not stealing, what is it?" Mom took a deep breath before responding, her voice now cold. "Don't be ungrateful, Ally. Without us, you wouldn't have anything you have today." My grip on my phone tightened so hard my knuckles turned white. They really thought they were entitled to this. "Listen carefully," I said, my voice lower, more dangerous than ever. "This ends now." Then I hung up. Immediately, I opened my banking app and revoked their access. I called the credit card company, reported unauthorized charges, and requested a new card. Then I sat down, staring at my phone's glowing screen, my heart still racing from the adrenaline. They had pushed me too far. I had put up with too much, but this was the end of it. Family manipulation at its finest. I thought it would be over once I cut off their credit card access. I assumed that once they realized their free money was gone, they'd back off and leave me alone. But I underestimated my parents. They never accepted defeat that easily. 2 days after I canceled the card, I got a text from my mom. "Mom, Allie, this is ridiculous. We're family. Are you really going to abandon your parents over a little money?" I stared at the screen. A little money? They had taken thousands from me without a word, and now they were acting like I was the one in the wrong? I didn't reply. A few hours later, another message came in. "Mom, can we meet and talk? I don't want our family to fall apart over a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding? I clenched my jaw. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was betrayal. And I knew that if I agreed to meet them, they'd do what they did best, make me feel guilty. I wasn't falling for it this time, but they didn't stop. The call that pushed me over the edge. 3 days later, my dad called me. I hesitated before answering. The moment I said hello, his cold voice cut through the line. "You're overreacting, Allie. We're family, and family helps each other. Do you know how many times your mother has cried over this?" I gripped my phone tighter. Of course. No apology, no accountability, just guilt-tripping. I took a slow breath. "Have you or Mom even once thought about how I feel? Do you feel any remorse for taking advantage of me?" Dad sighed, like he was the one suffering. "Allie, this isn't about money, it's about principle. We raised you, gave you everything, and now you're turning your back on your family over something so small?" I laughed. A dry, humorless laugh. "Then you don't need to worry," I said. "If this isn't about money, then you won't need anything from me ever again, right?" Silence. Then, he hung up. The Christmas Eve showdown. I thought that was the end of it. I thought they'd finally get the message. I was wrong. On Christmas Eve, as I sat on the couch with Liam, watching Emma and Lucas excitedly open their presents, there was a knock at the door. Liam looked at me. "Do you want to get that?" I sighed. I already knew who it was. When I opened the door, I wasn't surprised to see my parents standing there. This time, they weren't empty-handed. They held a large, glittering gift box. Mom forced a smile. "We couldn't let the holidays pass without seeing our grandkids, could we?" I crossed my arms. "Do you really think I'm letting you in after everything you've done?" Mom blinked, acting as if I had just said something cruel. "Allie, think of the children. Don't drag them into adult issues." Rage flared inside me. "Oh, so now you care about them?" I snapped. Where was that concern when you refused to let them come to Thanksgiving? Their faces fell. Mom opened her mouth, probably to say something manipulative, but I raised a hand to stop her. You should leave, I said firmly. My kids don't need gifts in exchange for love. They need people who actually care about them, not ones who show up only when they want something. Mom's expression shifted, from shock to anger. But I didn't care anymore. I shut the door in their faces. Their last desperate move, legal threats. I truly thought that slamming the door on Christmas Eve would make them understand that they could no longer manipulate me. I was wrong again. The silence lasted just over a week, but I wasn't naive enough to think they had given up. Then, one winter morning, as I sipped my coffee and watched Lucas doodle on a piece of paper, Liam walked in, holding an envelope. You should look at this, he said, his eyes filled with concern. I took the envelope and immediately noticed my parents' names printed in the corner. My heart pounded as I tore it open and pulled out a thick stack of documents. The words at the top made my stomach drop. Legal notice regarding grandparents' visitation rights. I blinked, rereading it. My parents were trying to sue me for the right to see Emma and Lucas. Liam sighed, pulling out a chair next to me. They really think they can drag you to court just because you won't let them in the house? I let out a humorless laugh. They don't want visitation, Liam. They want control. The final psychological game. I knew this game. I knew their mindset. If they couldn't manipulate me with guilt, they'd try to legally force my hand. I immediately called my lawyer. After I explained the situation, he actually chuckled. They don't have a case, Allie. Grandparents' rights only apply in special circumstances, like if a parent dies or loses custody. Your parents can't demand visitation when you're the legal guardian and fully capable of raising your kids. I exhaled in relief. I knew they had no real case, but the fact that they had gone this far filled me with fury. This time, I was going to confront them directly. Here's your translation into American English. The final confrontation. I drove to my parents' house, my heart pounding with determination. When my mom opened the door, she looked surprised to see me. Oh, so you finally decided to come? She scoffed. I held up the stack of legal documents in front of her. Did you really think suing me would make things better? She shrugged, trying to appear calm. We just want the chance to see our grandchildren. If you weren't being so selfish, we wouldn't have had to do this. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, is that so? If you truly cared about Emma and Lucas, you wouldn't have excluded them from Thanksgiving dinner. If you truly loved them, you wouldn't have stolen money from me. You wouldn't have tried to manipulate me with guilt. This isn't about the kids, Mom. This is about power. And I have bad news for you. You have no power over me anymore. Her face paled, and my dad stepped out from the living room, crossing his arms. Ally, you're acting like a child. I stepped closer. No, Dad. For the first time in my life, I'm acting like an adult, one who refuses to be taken advantage of. I took a deep breath. Listen carefully. If you continue threatening me, I won't just cut off contact. I'll file a restraining order. And if you think I'm bluffing, go ahead and test me. Silence. I turned to leave, but before stepping through the door, I looked back at my mother one last time. I used to be terrified of losing my family, but now I realize something. Family isn't defined by DNA. Family is made up of the people who love you without conditions. And you? You're not my family anymore. I shut the door behind me, leaving behind a heavy, deafening silence. A message to you. What this story means. It's heartbreaking to realize that sometimes, family isn't made up of people who truly have your best interests at heart. If someone uses the law as a weapon to control you, that isn't love. If someone only sees you as a financial resource, that isn't family. And if someone tries to make you feel guilty for setting boundaries, that's a clear sign they never truly respected you. You are not obligated to keep someone in your life just because they are family. You are not required to forgive people who aren't even sorry. You do have the right to live your life free from the control of those who seek to take advantage of you. Protect yourself, set boundaries, and remember, real family loves you unconditionally. They don't manipulate you. Do you think I did the right thing? If you were in my position, how would you have reacted? Share your thoughts below. True freedom, the ending they never expected. I walked out of my parents' house that day without looking back. No more guilt weighing on my shoulders, no more manipulative phone calls, no more fear of rejection. For the first time in my life, I felt free. The days that followed were filled with silence. No more texts from my mom, no more guilt trips from my dad, no more snide remarks from Daniel. They finally understood. I was no longer their puppet. I spent the start of the new year in a way I had never dared to before, without any obligations to a toxic family. On a quiet Saturday morning, I woke up to the comforting smell of coffee. Liam was reading the newspaper on the couch. Emma and Lucas ran around the house, giggling, completely unaware that their world had once been threatened by the very people who were supposed to love them most. I had done the right thing. I had protected my children. They lost their control over me. As time passed, I realized something profound. They never truly cared about me or my children. They never called to check if I was okay. They never sent birthday wishes to Emma. They weren't there when Lucas learned how to ride his bike. And that proved everything. All their past promises about family had been nothing but an illusion. As long as I played along, as long as I was their personal bank account and emotional punching bag, they were willing to pretend to be loving parents and grandparents. But the moment I set boundaries, the moment I refused to be used, they disappeared. That didn't make me sad. It only strengthened my resolve. I started building new traditions with my family, the family I had created. A family where no one had to earn love. For the first time, I was truly myself. That spring, we went on a camping trip. For the first time, there was no pressure to attend a dinner I didn't want to be at. No judgmental stares from my mom, no constant comparisons to Daniel. Just me, Liam, Emma, Lucas, and a wide, open world waiting for us. As we sat around the campfire, Lucas snuggled into my lap, his little eyes sparkling as he gazed up at the stars. "Mommy, will we always do this?" he asked. I held him close. "Yes, sweetheart, we'll always be a family." And that was the truth. Because family isn't made up of people who force you to endure pain for their own benefit. Family isn't built on conditions. Family is made up of the people who choose to love you every single day.